Now, let's face it, the campaign so far of the new Nigeria People's Party, or NNPP, has been anything but resounding, even as its members call on Nigerians to vote for their candidate if they want a positive, brighter future. But as we accumulate a growing pile of leaflets and literature from the APC, the PDP and the Labour Party, not to mention the SDP, the YPP, the ADC and others, where exactly is the NNPP in all that? How is it planning to stop the other parties from wiping it away from our consciousness? Because this appears to be what is happening, with the political space seeming to narrow to a three-horse race. Though, if you ask members of the NNPP, they trumpet that victory is theirs for the taking, and that their presidential candidate, Rabiu Kwankwaso, will be elected in 2023. But all the pundits seem to agree that though the NNPP may bob optimistically around its stronghold of Kano in the northwest, there's not enough evidence to suggest that this track record will necessarily mean anything significant on the national level. But still, the party insists that it has its guns turned on the front runners, and that Mr. Kwankwaso aims to eclipse the lot in 2023. Well, for more on that, I'm joined now in the studio by the National Publicity Secretary of the new Nigeria People's Party, or NNPP, Agbo Major. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you, Charles.
Good to see you again. You're not
yes.
We don't see you that often, so it's good to see you here.
Well, I stay more on the field. We're talking to Nigerians. That's why most times when you look for us, you don't get us, because we're there on the field.
My question to you is, how do you intend to gain the mandate of the Nigerian people when you, your party, your presidential candidate have appear to be less visible on the publicity circuit than the other front-runner candidates and their parties? How do you advance your cause when your visibility appears to be limited?
Well, it depends on the angle from where you're seeing it. When you talk about publicity, you could be talking of conventional publicity. You could be talking of, because publicity...
Well, your media exposure is very limited, let's face it.
Media, it's also, I'm going to go the same direction too. When you talk of media, are you talking of the conventional media? Or you are talking of other means of talking to Nigerians?
Well,
all makes up...
Yeah, but one would expect that you would be harnessing every form of communication, because you want to win more and more people every day, whether it's traditional or social or whatever.
Well, for us, we strongly believe that it's of no use, staying along the same route, every time the election cycle is here. We'll stay on the same route, which is to stay very high. Go up to media houses, buy up time and all of that.
You're not paying for this time that you're sitting here.
Of course, yes, but that is you. But is it also applicable to others?
No. The point is this. You are not paying for this time.
That is for a rise.
Yeah, there are some things that you will, if you're holding a big rally and you want cameras there for hours on end, that's a different thing. But for us we have an obligation to give you airtime, because that is what we're required to do. We must reflect a broad church of representation in order to give the Nigerian people a chance to make a proper decision, an informed decision. You're not making yourself available. We've been trying to get your candidate for a very long time. Sometimes we try to reach you guys, you're not available.
No. Even the last time I came in here, I told you, I made it very clear to viewers that there've been never any time you wanted us here and we're elusive.
No, you are usually available, but a lot of your other people aren't. We can't be talking to you alone all the time.
Invited and,
well, I don't want to get into names and things, but let me say this. Apart from the airwaves, let's take one example, the Arewa interactive session for presidential candidates. Your candidate has refused to attend and has accused the Arewa Joint Committee of being biased against him. In the face of several other candidates appearing before the committee from different parts of Nigeria, that sounds like an extraordinary, almost paranoid allegation. Why has your candidate turned down such an opportunity to set out his stall before millions of Nigerians, especially those in the north that he considers to be part of his natural constituency.
You see, Mr. Charles, it's important that I draw your attention to this.
Right.
Since 1999, we've had several electoral cycles. And for each of these cycles, you see organizations springing up. Some would come to say, okay, we want to do this, we want to bring you in to come and speak to Nigerians, we want to do this. But what we are saying is, what are the antecedents of these organizations? Of course, I'm a northerner. I know what I'm talking about. We know of ACF, which is Arewa Consultative Forum. We also know of the youth wing of ACF and all of that. As a matter of fact, when we saw that invitation, the first thing that struck my mind is, which one is this organization?
Yeah, but there are a joint committee. So there are a bunch of different organizations that have come together under one umbrella, including the ACF that you're talking about.
Well, that's maybe information that was made available to you. But when you are bringing somebody in the class of His Excellency Senator Dr. Rabi Musa Kwankwaso, it's important because, he's a core northerner, well established politically. And his level of endearment.
But Atiku has attended, Peter Obi has attended. Why can't your candidate attend?
Once you are struggling for relevance.
I like that.
If you are struggling for relevance, you want to be everywhere. But we are talking of somebody who is none, and so wherever.
So basically, you take the people for granted that you've already got their support.
No, that's not correct.
And therefore, you don't need to campaign anymore.
No, Mr. Charles, that's not what I'm saying. First, what is the pedigree? What is known, if there is any, about this organization?
So they don't meet your criteria of where your candidate should be.
I'm telling you that as a northerner,
present.
As a northerner, until that invitation came, that was the first time I was hearing the name of that organization.
Right.
And I'm a northerner.
Well, you've heard the name Arewa before, haven't you?
Yes, Arewa, yes.
Right, okay. Now, this is the Arewa Joint Committee, and they're holding interactive sessions for presidential candidates.
Okay.
Let's get beyond that anyway, because it's entirely your right and your prerogative to attend or not attend. Tell us about your policies, your party's policies and priorities as contained in your manifesto, which presumably is going to come out soon, and how that sets the tone for the sort of leadership the NNPP is offering Nigerians in 2023.
There are two angles to this. One, the party has a manifesto that is in place that guides its operation in terms of its engagement with the electorates. What we are preparing to come out with now is, okay, how do we now bring out what the candidate should be telling Nigerians based on the grand manifesto of the party?
Yeah, I think I've seen that bigger manifesto.
Yeah, that's what we're working on.
Yes.
And I can tell you that in the next 4 or 5 days, we'll be through with this and it will be presented to Nigerians formally. But come to think of it, what are the challenges that Nigerians are facing? These are traditional issues: security, education, agriculture, and all of that. But what we are trying to do is to bring, our constitution, our manifesto as it is now, to bring it in tune with the current situation of things. First, for instance, we're talking of agriculture. Of course, you're a media man, you would have seen that there's a likelihood of acute hunger taking over the land.
Yes.
Because of this massive flooding.
Absolutely.
That we've experienced in the past 1-2 months, which is still prevalent. Now, what does NNPP want to do? For instance, where is our dry season farming program? Is it there? It's not. Now, I have kept saying this, that what we intend to do as a party is not to continue to go through that traditional route that Nigerians know. We want to do things differently in such a way that the results that will be generated, Nigerians will be able to say, we had thought that it was no longer possible for any party to provide the solution to the challenges we have. But obviously, this party appears to be telling us things that ordinarily we never imagined would work. Dry season farming, for instance. If you reduce our farming activities to rainy season farming, of course, you would have seen from records available now that I can't quantify it, but several hectares of rice have been washed away. Yams, cassava and all of that, washed away by flood. Now the question is, if you go to other African countries, Egypt, even in Benin Republic here, you see a lot of dry season farming activities. What we are trying to say is what stops us from, engaging our farmers during the dry season, giving them what is required to ensure that they are able to have, maximum use of the water resources available to us, supported by the machineries that will be able to provide us a political...
That's a longer term issue.
No, it's not.
Isn't it?
The waters are there.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to understand is the fact that your candidate is not very visible when things are happening. I mean, we've talked about your manifesto. You're talking about distilling things from that manifesto and making them relevant to what is happening today. But you can have broad strokes. I mean, government is a continuum. It continues to fine-tune whatever policies and programs it has, depending on what is happening on the day. I mean, your candidate, we're not seeing him out there with the people who are victims of the flooding. We're not seeing him traveling around the country, talking to people. He wants to be president. How else can Nigerians establish this connection with him if they don't see him in an empathetic mode when the country is in crisis? No,
he is. Just last week alone, in fact, the whole of last week, none of us was in Abuja. None of us, not even a single one of us. From the presidential candidate to the most junior within the NWC rank and file. Nobody was in Abuja for a single day last week. We were in Lagos. From there, we went to Kano. We went as far as, visited a lot of rural communities within Kano that were affected by this flood. Of course, you are aware
that's his constituency. That's his hometown.
Is Lagos his hometown?
But there are lots of other... I mean, there are places across Nigeria where you want people to vote for you. Places where your visibility is less than in Kano. You see what I mean? Anyway, are you going to ensure... You talked about education, for example. For Nigerians. Are you going to ensure education for Nigerians, a safer country, better health care, a stronger economy? If so, how will you deliver on those crucial things beyond just talking about them in an interview or in your broader manifesto? An economy that truly embraces opportunities for Nigerians in the midst of terrible unemployment and some of the terrible things like flooding that you're talking about.
These are some of the things, like when I was talking about agriculture.
Yeah.
I was trying to let you understand that the same route every time.
We understand
You can't get any result that is different from what you've had in the past. That's why I started from agriculture. A radical shift from rainy season farming to dry season farming. Now education, what are the challenges? The lecturers are perpetually on strike. Just before I walked in here, I was discussing with a professor, from ABU Zaria, who came all the way to the office. We were talking. And I was trying to ask him, what really are those challenges? Why are you guys unstable, trying to mold the destinies of our children? What are the issues? He said, look, my brother, you are not one of us. So you will not understand, but we're talking about insincerity on the part of the government. He raised one key thing there, insincerity. That means that the government seems not to be on one page with them, to guarantee their productivity. These are some of the things we'll be looking at. Now, what are those things that keeps these lecturers away from the classrooms? Who deal with them? They are there. If there are issues of emolument, if there are issues of their welfare, if there are issues that have to do with infrastructures, available to facilitate learning within the school environment, these are issues that we'll be dealing with.
Yeah.
Then you talk about security. Is it that people have to keep coming here to tell you these are the things we will do and all of that? The same route, we are saying that we want to engage Nigerians from very different perspectives. Now, how do we deal with this? Security is about the people. I've said it here before. Shift it to the people. Let it be a challenge on their part to secure themselves. You will see that these things will be a thing of the past. And when you have security in place, the economy naturally bounces back because people will be productively engaged. Then you look at infrastructures. What happens to our electricity? These guys came to power, on the excuse that electricity is not there. And so the ordinary barbers that ordinarily should be engaged, looking for small money here and there to boost the economy and all of that. They simply can't find electricity to do anything. What is the problem? So much money has gone into this sector without any commensurate results. Now, what do we do? Where is the supervision? These are the things that are wrong. It's one thing to release this money. It's another thing to follow it up and ensure that what the money is meant for,
yes,
you know.
But you would have to have money that you can then release. And as you know, the Nigerian government faces a big black hole in its finances right now, where it doesn't have enough, for whatever reason, it doesn't have enough revenue to cover its debt servicing and all its other spending. So what would your candidate do in those circumstances if he were to become president in 2023? Will he borrow more? Will he raise taxes? Will he reduce spending? Because those are the challenges that will face any winner in 2023 from day one.
Even before you talk about, first, the issue of borrowing is out of it. We don't have that as an option. Nigeria, as it is now, we don't have any reason. Of course, every country borrows. But when you borrow at an uncontrollable, level.
So you're saying that you will borrow, or that you will not, because you just said now that you won't borrow.
No, what I'm saying is borrowing massively, like we are seeing now, is out of it.
So you'll be borrowing in small bits.
No, when there is need to borrow. That's why I told you, even the advanced democracies borrow.
Yeah,
that's
but the government will
what we are saying is, what are those openings that you can explore to generate the funds you need to run the government? Are they being properly explored? What happens to agriculture?
Well,
why is our economy dependent on petroleum alone?
Yeah, but you're asking questions that everyone is asking. What we want is your answers
That's what I'm telling
to
you.
Those questions.
First of all, we'll get this economy working. First, the economy must not be dependent on oil alone.
Yeah, everybody says that, but how are you going to make it not dependent on oil?
I mentioned the issue of dry season farming. Remember that at a point Nigeria was living on proceeds from agricultural produce.
Yeah, that was a long time
Cocoa and all of that.
Yeah.
What stops us from returning to that? The economy was doing well. It was booming. Why can't we return to that? The same soil that we had and took advantage of to produce those things that were exported and made this large foreign exchange is still there. So what stops us from returning to it? The Southwest is still there. That was done massively for production of cocoa. It's still there. What we need to do is to harness the potentials of the people and take advantage of the fertile nature of the soil and all of that. The first and most important thing is to run away from this one-sided economy, this economy that depends only on oil. Even the oil we are talking about, look at all the perforations.
Well, oil...
Pipelines running illegally.
It's emerged that the oil in Nigeria has 60 years left, and it'll be over. So you guys had better come up with good ideas.
That's why I'm telling you that our government, an NNPP government under His Excellency Rabi Musa Kwankwaso, first of all, will downgrade the dependence of our economy on oil and promote other sectors that will generate foreign exchange for us. Agriculture is one of it. Then two, what other things do we do? Guarantee security of the people and attract foreign investments.
And when you say agriculture, are you talking about the entire value chain of agriculture?
Yes, why not?
Because what you've talked about, you're saying why not? What you talked about was the raw material. In other words, producing cocoa here and exporting raw cocoa, or producing palm produce or whatever, ground nuts.
We will not rely majorly on exporting those produce. Of course, part of it will be exported for direct foreign exchange earning, but part of it also will be processed in such a way that Nigerians will benefit from the end products along that value chain as they drop, and then it will continue like that. You see, one problem that we have as Africans is that we stop at a level when there is still something to work with. That is what we are calling value chain now. We will ensure that we explore it until we get to a level where there is nothing, that you can create value out of anymore. These are the missing links. So what we will do is, for instance, let's take cocoa for instance. Nigeria, as it stands now, we export ordinary chocolate drinks, the ones you buy for your children to go to school with and all of that. And these are derivatives from things like cocoa, raw cocoa. So if we are the ones producing this, like it's done in Abidjan, why do we have to move everything out? Yes, we'll produce, we'll move some out, then we'll process some in such a way that they will be useful to the citizens. So we will explore that. That will make our economy not only dependent on oil, because like you rightly have alluded to, in a short while from now, there will be no oil. There will be no oil.
Absolutely.
And when that happens, what happens to the economy? The economy goes down. So of what use will it be for us as a nation to continue to be dependent
and
on
even
this oil
before the oil runs out, the world is moving in a different direction.
Exactly.
I mean, away from fossil fuels.
So these are the issues. So an NNPP government under His Excellency will move this economy completely away from oil. Of course, oil will be there because it's not a one-day stuff. We can't move this economy just overnight, but it will just be there as a supporting base for the economy to continue to thrive. But our attention will be shifted to other sectors, you know, that will now become the pillar by the time oil becomes non-attractive to the world.
We will wait to see this more targeted manifesto that you're talking about. When can we expect it to come out?
Like I told you, finishing touches are being put. What we're trying to do is to marry the parties, because of course the presidential candidates manifesto derives from the party's manifesto. You know, so what we're trying to do now is in the next 4 or 5 days, or at most 1 week, you would have both the party's manifesto, which is already, you know, there for the public to see, and then a brand new manifesto that would guide His Excellency's campaign.
So a more targeted,
that would derive
a more targeted manifesto. And beyond
in the next 4 or 5 days, expect to see that. And it's
beyond,
going to be done in a very elaborate ceremony.
Sure. Well, we'll look forward to it. And beyond your manifesto, the other important thing that we talked about at the outset is the optics and where you fit in the face of the ferocious challenge of other candidates like Peter Obi for the position of the third force. People see his movement, and you have to admit that that is true. People see his movement and his Labour Party as the great and growing political opportunity, as the party of tomorrow, not the NNPP. I mean, he, Peter Obi, not Rabiu Kwankwaso, is coming across as the real contender for power in 2023. How will you turn that around, especially where so many young people seem to believe that he's acting in their interest and they seem to believe in his principles?
First, Charles, I've said it repeatedly on air here, and I'll continue to say it, it's not in our character to discuss personal issues bordering on candidates of other political parties, or even other political parties.
Well, I'm not asking you to discuss personal issues.
Now, what I want you to understand is that I've said this so many times. We are not taken away by the media hype they enjoy, which we strongly believe is sponsored. Is sponsored. I want you to underline that word, is sponsored.
I like that.
We are never taken away by that. As far as we are concerned, what Nigerians want to see as we head towards 2023 is who is doing that thing that is different from what they've seen in the past. And that is what His Excellency Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso stands for. He's in touch with the people. We are not operating, you know, the way others are operating. Every day they are there, you know. And by the way, I keep asking this question. These boys, and each time I say it, once I leave, my phone will be beeping every second. People will be calling me to say, you are harsh on air and all of that. But the truth has to be said, because we're in a very dire situation. What we are looking for is the way out of this quagmire for us as a country. The truth is, these boys, if you want me to say it directly, let me say these NSAS boys. Do they have the PVCs? If they have the PVCs, would they resist the temptation, you know, on the election day of being swayed another way with the, you know, the influence of money and all of that, looking at the excruciating hunger that is biting so deeply? You understand? And the poverty level?
Yeah.
So the truth is, why are we worried by what people write? When everybody has access to Android phones, you could pick it, even on the comfort of your bed, and write whatever you want to write. That shouldn't be a basis for assessment.
Right.
So when I hear people say His Excellency Kwankwaso is number 4, I laugh. As far as we are concerned, because we are in touch with the people, he is the candidate to beat.
Okay.
And that's why Nigerians, especially the presidential candidates, are worried. Because Kwankwaso, His Excellency Rabi Musa Kwankwaso, is the problem. Why? Because he's close to the people believe in him, they trust him, they felt him, they know what he could do. He has always been on their side and all of that.
Right.
So
Okay.
we are not bothered with the assessments that are being made when people say PDP is one or APC is one and all of that. We just left Kano.
Right.
Just as we were leaving Kano, the APC candidate was flying in. I can tell you, though I won't want to say it on air, but I can tell you, the atmosphere changed just as we were leaving. The frenzy with which Northerners, Kano indigenes came out, immediately was, what do I call it?
Dissipated?
Exactly.
Right.
Okay. On hearing that the APC candidate was coming and all
well,
of that.
on that note, I want to thank you, Agbo Major. It's always a pleasure talking with you. And Mr. Major is the National Publicity Secretary of the New Nigeria People's Party. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.